Thanks, Kevin. Let me introduce the moderator for the first panel. He is Dr. Damian Thomas, and he is the National Museum of African American History and Culture's curator of sports, as well as the curator of the museum's inaugural exhibition, Sports, Leveling the Playing Field. He is the author of Globe-Trotting African American Athletes in Cold War Politics, Deploying African American Sports Stars in the Cold War. He will serve as moderator of our first panel, so please help me welcome Dr. Damian Thomas.
Good morning. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and they're going to come up, give a 10-minute presentation, and then the next panelist will come up, and then we'll have a discussion. Want to start by introducing Kevin Gover, who's director of the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian. He has served as an Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs in the U.S. Department of the Interior prior to coming to the Smithsonian. There, he won praise for his efforts to rebuild long-neglected Indian schools and expand tribal and Bureau of Indian Affairs police forces throughout the country. Please welcome him.
All right, that felt a little silly. I'm back. Okay. So what do Confederate memorials and Native mascots have in common? That's a great question. In short, they are products of the same era in American history. And this was an era in which the notion of white supremacy was not merely practiced and propounded, it was assumed, it was embedded, it was not so much a central fact of American life as simply an understanding that really did not suffer or merit challenge. This is the period between, let's say, 1890 and the beginning of World War II. During this period, of course, we saw the end of Reconstruction, and we saw the confinement of Indians to reservations. The population of Native Americans in the United States had collapsed to around 250,000 from, of course, several million prior to contact. Professor Lowen refers to this period as the nadir. Jim Crow was flourishing. Segregation was both law and practice in the United States. White immigrants were desirable and others were not. The Ku Klux Klan was a political force that rallied thousands in the streets of both New York and Washington. Woodrow Wilson systematically undid the meager progress toward integration of the federal government that had preceded him. The U.S. was a fully racialized and racist society. With regard to Indians in particular, they were suffering under a set of rules that collectively were known as a civilization policy. This policy involved the taking of 90 million acres of land that had been promised to Native Americans in treaties. It involved the taking of children from Native American communities to often distant boarding schools where they were to be taught how not to be Indians any longer. Native American culture and religion were suppressed. Native Americans were literally under the control of Bureau of Indian Affairs agency superintendents who had control over really every element of their lives. So, meanwhile, on the intellectual side, we were seeing the development, what would you call it? The creation, the justification of the idea of white supremacy. I found one particularly intriguing example in a book called Dodge's Comparative Geography by Professor Richard Elwood Dodge of Columbia University. And here's what he said. These are direct quotes from his book about the races. Of the white race, he said, they are the most enterprising and imaginative race of the world. They speak many languages and are divided into many nations. He then described how white people had emigrated from Europe, and they could now be found in every part of the world. Emigrate's an interesting choice of words, isn't it? Then of the yellow race, Professor Dodge writes, as a rule, they are not progressive and include some of the most backward tribes of the world. The Japanese, Chinese, Eskimos, and Laplanders all belong to the yellow race. Of the red race, most of the red race are but little civilized, although a few are just beginning to develop industries. The Indians do not readily show their true nature to strangers, and hence are little understood. Usually considered a sullen and cruel people, this reputation is often far from just. Well, thank you, Mr. Dodge. And then finally, of the black race, as a race, they are somewhat indolent, like other peoples whose homes are in tropical countries. They are often impulsive in their actions, but are faithful and affectionate to anyone for whom they care. So, Professor Dodge was not alone in these beliefs. In fact, he was reflecting very much the state of knowledge at the turn of the century. Scholars and the white public agreed on what the races were and what their respective capabilities were. Science, in quotes, science busied itself with proving the white race's superior brain capacity and general genetic superiority. And I should add that even our beloved Smithsonian was engaged in that work. So how do we see these ideas expressed in the public square? This is a picture of the Alexander Hamilton United States Customs House in New York City, Lower Manhattan. This also is the home of the National Museum of the American Indian in New York. It was built in 1907, not as the National Museum, it was a customs house at one point, by architect Cass Gilbert, and it is a masterpiece of the Beaux-Arts style of architecture. Now you'll see the four sculptures, the large sculptures in front. Those are the continents, or they're meant to represent the continents. And these pieces were created at the opening of the Customs House. This is America. Daniel Chester French is the sculptor. And you can see that America is rising from her chair, leaning forward, looking far into the distance, and basically ready, the very symbol of progress, bold, surging, productive. This is labor to the left of America. And as you can see, this is a depiction of an industrious, well-muscled white man. On the other side, behind America, is this depiction of an Indian. Is this homage? You might, if I had a better detail, you would see there that there are Mayan glyphs and a Mayan serpent that are at the foot of this sculpture. And you'll also notice the sheaf of corn on America's lap, indicating bounty. But here, what we really see is this Indian being led to civilization. Note the torch, and that the Indian is following behind America. This is Europe, regal and confident. You will see on her left, her arm is resting on the world that she conquered. This is Asia. As you can see, inscrutable, dangerous. That's a tiger to her right, awaiting the instructions of Asia. To her left are enslaved workers through which she gathered her riches. And if you will look at her feet, you will see that her throne is on the skulls of the many millions of people who were murdered in the Asian empires. This all without any real self-awareness, I would suspect. We might well see skulls at the foot of America or Europe, but no, they're reserved for Asia. Oops. And this is Africa. As you can see, Africa is asleep. It's unclear whether she is exhausted or merely lazy. The lion to her left is also asleep. And to the right is the Sphinx, which is, of course, in decay, indicating that Africa's best days were behind her. So was Daniel Chester French or Professor Dodge, were they racist? Well, yes, but no more so than the rest of the culture, really. And so they were expressing these things that were very much the subject of general agreement throughout American culture. It was not confined, by the way, to the East Coast. This is part of a pioneer monument in San Francisco. It was established in 1894. And what you see here is a depiction of a vaquero, an Indian that had obviously been defeated in resisting the advance of the vaqueros, and a missionary there to help after the conquest. This is in front of the American Museum of Natural History in New York. And here we see Theodore Roosevelt high astride his steed. Isn't he the very picture of boldness and progress? To his right is a Native American. Hard to say exactly why that Indian is there. What is clear is that he is he is something beneath Theodore Roosevelt himself. On the other side is an African or African American who is carrying Roosevelt's weapon, and obviously is also subject to the authority of the white man on the horse. Another thing that we saw from this same era, this is from Columbus Circle in New York City in 1892, and way up there, if you've ever seen this, that is Christopher Columbus. New York is not alone. This is from our very own Columbus Circle right here in Washington. This one bears a particularly annoying legend, talking about how Christopher Columbus discovered a new world for all mankind. Well, first there's the discovered part, which is annoying. But obviously it implies that the native people who were here when Columbus arrived were not a part of humanity, and that is equally troubling. If you look there to Columbus's right, your left, that is an Indian skulking behind some stone. It's not exactly clear what that might mean. So these are our public monuments. These are really part of our public life. And as I say, to the casual observer, you might say, oh, well, yeah, cool monument. But only if you stop to look at it do you begin to see the messages that are there. So what do these have to do with Mascots? It was during the same time that Mascots came into being. This is the Cleveland Indians, renamed their team in 1915. This was their early logo. This is one of the few logos that actually managed to become more racist over time. The team did announce just this year that this logo will be retired. Not in 2018 because there is swag to sell, but in 2019 this logo will no longer be there. This is one of the early logos of Washington's National Football League team, founded by George Preston Marshall, an avowed racist and segregationist. They were formed in 1932, first as the Boston Braves, just like the baseball team of the same name. In 1933, they became the Boston R Words. 1937, they moved to Washington and became this city's National Football League franchise. After that, hundreds of teams, schools, and colleges all across the country also adopted Native American mascots and team names, including the R word used by the Washington football team. So, should all of these things be destroyed? Well, that's what we're here to talk about today. It is best to understand them as vestiges of a time when white supremacy was at the very center of American culture. They tell us something important about our history, and for that reason alone, we should take pause in thinking about them and what should happen to them. But we certainly must understand their origin and function to make good decisions about what is to be their fate. And that too is what we're here to talk about today. So we'll turn our attention more directly now to the mascots. I would like to play a short video before the next speaker comes out. Let's see if this is going to work.
It's been said that an image is worth 1,000 words. A concept implying that a single visual element can replace a multitude of descriptive factors, that one image can carry meaning and definition far more adequately than any verbal or written description. In the case of our own definitions, that is, as Native American people, why have we been reduced to a single word, a single silhouette? Red skin, one word, 2 syllables. Labeled in many dictionaries as a noun, dated or offensive, and simply defined an American Indian.
Every so often, the press discovers Native peoples.
A protest in North Dakota against a major oil pipeline continues to grow.
How is it that they're able to proceed in the way they have? They believe their own racist stereotypes about Native people.
It was never intended to be racist. 20 years ago, you didn't hear about any of this.
But we're still considered these kind of like headdress caricatures living on the plains and, never went past 1900. That doesn't really allow us into like this, modern dialogue where we have all these issues that are happening.
So Indians are wrapped into the fiber of America from the very, very beginning.
There's a lot of complex history with DC, this football team, with race, its fan base.
I'm an Indigenous person, I'm an Indigenous woman, and I have a voice, and that's the strongest thing that I have.
They don't look like Indians to me. This is what happens in settler societies. They take old European rituals and practices and beliefs, they graft them onto new sort of symbol systems around Indians.
In Jewish history, we have been called so many names, and the names connote inferiority.
You can't force honor on people.
So I should have explained just a little more clearly that this is a trailer for a feature-length film which I expect we will be showing at the NMAI before very long. So again, thank you for your attention, and enjoy your day today.
Thank you, Kevin.